Welcome, my friends, to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, and I'm thrilled you're joining me today for a fun conversation with a passionate author. We're kicking off the program, like it's our tradition, with a short reading from the feature book. I hope you guys enjoy it. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Wilnona Marie, and I wrote this book, Free Falling and Loving It, with JD and Brandy M. Miller. It is a romance book, and it's my first time really pulling off a romance. I would have to thank Brandy for making it truly romantic. So I'm going to do a little preview here, and starting with chapter 6. Haley woke to the blaring sounds of sirens. Her feet hit the floor, missing the quick access slippers she kept beneath the bed for just such occasions. But she heeded the call of urgency to leave her house and move forward in her bare feet. Visions of plumes of smoke climbing the stairs in search of a resident to char triggered a fear that she was going to be roasted alive in her own dwelling. The thought of being trapped inside, burning up alongside everything she owned, was one that haunted her since she was 7 years old. She considered slipping on her robe while scurrying to leave, her eyelids still pasted shut beneath the sleep mask as she sprinted down the stairs to the door. The click of the jazz-era Harlem-style repurposed store helped a few fragmented thoughts settle into place as she stepped into the safety of the open air. And the breezy late summer coolness began to slip around areas best not shown in public. A new fear displaced the fear of burning alive, dulling the ordinarily pleasant sensation of air drying her more private crevices, and she found herself mentally reviewing her nightly routine with a silent prayer that she had not actually foregone to putting on clothes in her haste to exit the building. She began by patting her face. Her dermis was moisturized. That was the step that always came before unfolding the pajamas, which were neatly stored at the end of her bed each morning. There were 2 bottles of her nocturnal skin routine used at the apex of the routine pyramid, followed by her underpants, a roller for her bangs, and then her pajamas. Denying the evidence to the contrary, she reassured herself that she simply must be wearing the pajamas. Putting them on was the last step she took before climbing into bed each night. She must be overreacting. The fresh air caressing her curves was not proof of a reality she would rather face. Starting at the crown of her head, Haley began patting the naturally curly mane, now brushed into a bun, down her neck and to her shoulders, and then onto her breasts and nipple. Naked. She was bloody naked. All other thoughts attempting to whimper forth were drowned by these deafening words exploding forth. The horrifying reality confronted her. She left the building, hoping to preserve her life, but now found herself silently wishing that the ground would open up beneath her and just swallow her whole. The irony was not lost on her. Her hands flew to cover areas only a doctor or a husband should see, and her eyes darted back and forth, checking for any entrepreneurial types with a phone and access to YouTube. The day was off to a bad start. Reliving it in a public forum and seeing the comment below would be the nail in the casket of her recovery. She jotted down a quick mental memo to develop a lack of resilience. A lack of reliance on technology after the incident of embarrassment. A footnote to the body of the text, she added to always put on a robe before leaving the house. A quick double check for morning joggers, people strolling about, or the random peeping Tom relieved her mind. A small sliver of hope that no one would come by before she could make her way back inside began to make its way to her brain. It was the crack of dawn. Surely anybody else wouldn't be awake yet. The road clear, she bent down and blindly patted the stoop for her spare key. Under the fake rock and the giant planter on the left of her front step. I'm going to skip ahead so we can get to the funny part. A sense of urgency filled her mind. There were already plenty of tidbits available for a morning matinee viewing, and she had no desire to uncover the few pieces she could hide with her hands and forearms. Scouting through the dirt, expletives began streaming softly out of her mouth when she heard a man's voice coming from the sidewalk. Ma'am, are you okay? She froze before sneaking a peek at the owner of the voice from between her knees. Light seemed to pop off in her head as she saw the man's light forehead sheen from this morning jog, gave him an effervescent glow. The 6'3" guy was talking to her with two airborne cheeks. Her hands were temporarily painted dirt brown, slash black. Her face had been smeared with topsoil on her front and back cheeks. Her hands were still resting on the pot she was searching in. What could he see? How much of her body bits were open to his view? Did she do enough exercise to be standing here with her back end spread eagle? Was her full moon firm and her cellulite appropriately hidden? For the first time in her life, she considered the merits of bleaching her excrement orifice. If she had to let her little moon shine, it might as well be in its full glory. She stood up, covering her breast and lower area as she turned around to face him. I'm fine. Why do you ask? You look like you might need help. His eyes took in the whole of her. Having already began, she doubled down. Nope, just air drying. And you? A slight smile touched the corner of his lips. I hope the policemen or young children don't come by. She hoped he would hurry up on his way so she could get back to looking for that key. Me too. Have a nice run, sir. Have a nice day. He extended his hand. I hope you get back in your house, Miss Prescott. She extended her own hand, revealing a C-cup bosom. And that is the middle of chapter 6.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Inside the Minds of Authors. Today, I am so thrilled because I have my dear friend and absolute talented Miss Wilnona with us. Hi, sweetie. How are you?
I'm doing swell. Happy to share this new book.
I don't know if I'm traumatized for her or she's going, oh God, that is every woman's or every person's nightmare in surround sound. So let's jump in. First romance, how do you feel about this?
I have a lot to work on for romance element. I found that out. It was a lot of therapy for myself. That was also interesting. But yeah, it was fun. It was a lovely write. It's been 8 years in the making, and it's the longest I've ever spent on any book because most people who follow me know I finish a book in like 30 days or less. So this was weird.
So tell us about the story. What are we experiencing? What is this story about? Give us more.
Okay, so the story Free Falling and Loving It actually came about because somebody was like, oh, you can write the bodice ripper for me, you know, a real bodice ripper for the modern day woman. And I was like, I can do that. I mean, I've written so many books. So I started it off and I was like, yes, I'm good to go. And 8 years later, I was still not done. But I have been constantly writing on it, like every year, I'd pick it up and write some more chapters and write some more chapters. When you got to the end of 8 years, it was like 1,000 pages. 1,000 pages about a lady who has spent 10 years in her house. And she was sad because she got divorced and she was divorcing a minor billionaire. And she had this whole career before him. And she was already on the public stage as being one of the few African-American women that was close to $1 billion in the tech industry. Back when, you know, .coms were still a thing and everyone was like rushing to get in there with the old gold rush. And she had actually found gold in what she was doing. She got divorced from him and society turned on her. And she was very surprised because she had given up everything for this man. She gave up the tech business and everything and started on an event planning business so that she could marry this man because he could get her into doors that she couldn't get herself into. So she was like, this is not a love decision. It's a business decision. And this picks up 10 years after that decision. And she's like, she has to come out of her house because her business, her event planning business is about to fail. So she applies everywhere and she gets one response back and she's not thinking. So she goes and She does a presentation and she recognizes that during that presentation, the guy that comes in a little late is her ex-husband, and the vice president of the charity that she's presenting to is the woman that he left her for. The board votes against him, and she now works and has one of the bigger contracts for her ex-husband. She works for her ex-husband and the future fiance of the future Mrs. Prescott.
Oh my God. That is painful in so many different ways. You are planning to make this into a romance somehow, right? Because you are going to give us some romance, and this is where Miss Brandy comes in and sweeps us off our feet. Because right now I'm going, this is a bad revenge story gone terribly wrong.
I thought it was absolutely hilarious. I'm like, can you imagine this woman coming back and being like, I have to work for my ex-husband, but I'm gonna make it work, you know? And I was like, no, there's so many things that are gonna be so funny. Now that you say it, I'm like, oh, maybe it wasn't as funny as I thought. That might explain why the book wasn't as funny as I thought.
Those are the situations that every person goes, oh, this is not going to end up well because he's going to make her life a living hell. And she needs the money, so she's going to suck it up.
I never thought of it that way while I was writing it. I thought of it as a comedy. There is romance. So she finds herself in a bit of a love triangle. I guess you could call it a triangle. It's more like a square. The woman that Mr. Prescott knows is always the one who's willing to give up her tech business, anything I can do to make you happy. And he's never met the woman who's like, yo, this is my business. Either you get out my way or you get in line. Either or. And so he's like, oh God, I love her. He loves business former Mrs. Prescott. He loves Haley for that. But he's like first day, he kisses her.
This is a whole bunch of scenarios that goes from I left you because you were too submissive to wait, I like who you really are.
Yeah.
And it's about to go crazy.
And then while she's there, she kind of like runs away from this whole idea and she's like, I can't do this. And so she gets in the elevator and she meets a younger guy. He's about 10 years her junior. And he's a parking lot attendant. And he's kind of attractive. I mean, he has a cowlick that stands up, a stubborn cowlick. But besides that, he's kind of attractive. And the younger guy mistakes her for Miss Prescott, which would be the daughter from Mr. Prescott's first marriage. She takes it and they agree to go on a coffee date. And later on during that week, she runs into Brandon, and who was the former fiance of Virginia, who is the woman that Mr. Prescott had left Haley for. Haley's like, I kind of like Brandon. It's a bit of a square. I mean, you said you wanted romance. I'm a person who writes mystery suspense, and I'm very plot driven. And I found that the romance is very character driven. There's not much you can do without that character growing and learning new things about themselves and having constant epiphany about where they are in life and what they want to do and how they want to do it and how they actually feel and maturing. And I don't do that. I have very static characters. Things happen to my characters on my mystery things and they react. How they react, it puts them in a new place, which gives you a new plot. And that's how you. So this was different. This was very hard, making all my characters grow. And this is really where Brandy came in and she taught me a lot. Oh, goodness, she taught me so much. Like the reason I can tell you the entire backstory of who Haley was before is because she gets on the phone and she was like, so how did Haley get here? And I was like, she walked into her house years ago. Yes, but why? It was a horrible divorce. But what did they say? I don't know. Well, what motivated Haley? The desire to hide? Well, why would she want to hide? Who was she before? And I'm like, for me, a character is born and then a character grows and then a character ends. And then if you decide to do another book, the character again is born. But for her, it's like the character had this entire life beforehand. And then they had thoughts and feelings and they process them a certain way. And their motivation is how they're always going to process things. And if the only way they're going to really change is that their motivation changes and they see this through maturity. And I was like, this is a lot. This is a world.
The fact that you went through that journey is amazing. What are those lessons when you tell somebody who's trying to be like, I'm going to go on this journey? What would you tell them?
It opens your mind and it opens your eyes to what your other characters could do. Now I'm thinking about like, why would that person choose an AK? Was it because something happened in their past? How do they feel about their safety? Or is it because of the safety of others? Do they need to overcompensate? And it's just interesting the characters and the storylines and the feelings that they have. And my stories are no longer like 90 some pages because I do little novellas and then I do one novel and then I do little novellas and then I do one novel. They're all turning out to be like novels and it's taking me longer than 30 days sometimes to write. But the things that you read now are just you're like, oh wow, this is a person, not a reaction.
There's a lot more into them than it's just a very glimpse in their past. You actually get to experience a lot more feelings. And the good news is that you do write series, so you do get to experience these things through them.
I also wanted to do so much in this romance because when it first got started, this person was in love with that person, and then that person just had girlfriend who was like this pediatrician heart surgeon. He didn't really love her, but he was like, I need to be more of an open person and show the world that I'm not just surface because I'm getting over this other lady who was really young and very surface. A soap opera romance.
Oh my God, I was gonna ask you the same thing. I was like, that's straight soap opera. Like you're writing the script for the next, days of our lives right there. That's what you had going on.
I think it was great. And then so she comes in, and I know I had like 1,000 pages, and I still hadn't finished, like wrapping everything up. And she was like, "All right, this whole character is just." I'm like, ah! There was this dancing duo where like he's dancing with this girlfriend that he doesn't love, and she's dancing with her ex-husband, and she doesn't love him either. But they're looking at each other like we're gonna do better than, and I'm gonna prove I'm all. I loved that scene. It was amazing, and she was like, "Yank, just yank the whole character."
There's no need for all of that. The story did not need it. At least the story you have in this book did not need it. What made you decide to finish? Because you've been working on this baby for 8 years. You could have stopped at any time. So you write all the time. What made you decide that, okay, we're going to commit. We're going to get this baby done?
COVID. And then I had two literary agents that were interested in the idea because they saw a comedy where you saw for, this woman comes out and she has to work for her ex-husband. And they were like, oh, the scenarios, the humor that's going to happen here and all this stuff. And I was like, right. And they're like, right. And they're like, all right, give me the manuscript. And I was like, I didn't tell them that, but I had to finish it. So it is now done. What I do is I like clean and I cook and I do everything in the household for like, and that I need to do for like an entire 2 weeks. And I just sat down and read it from beginning to end and then finished. And that's how that happened. How me and Brady did it, is I would rewrite an entire chapter the way I felt that it should be written. And then I would send it to Brady and then she would edit it. 'Cause she's an editor as well. So she would edit it and then fine tune the story. And I would read it and be like, all right, yeah, that's cool. I'd already started the next chapter. And that way I could, change anything I need to change. And then I sent her chapter 2. And it took us about 2 weeks.
It's actually pretty impressive to actually have that much back and forth and be able to polish the story to that essence in 2 weeks. That's pretty good. You also meant that you were like locked in, committed, and this is all you were doing.
That's it. Morning to evening, that's it. I moved from chair to chair. I think I moved from like one chair to the couch to another chair close to the fireplace. That was it. That was done. That was all I was doing.
Sometimes that's all you got to do. So tell us, you got romance here. Are you thinking of doing another one? Because this is a process for you.
Oh, dear Brandy, dear. I finished the Run romance novel, and then I got invited to a romance convention to come speak, and they were like, "Oh, you can pitch editors and agents." And I was like, "Great!" So I'm gonna pitch them this book. Brandy's like, "It's already published. Ooh, no one's gonna pick that up." She was like, "I'll tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna do the first story because we already know the backstory." So then I wrote the first 3 chapters. It took me 2 days, and we put together a full synopsis, and then she put together a 5-paragraph synopsis of 5 books of everything that happens within these 5 books and how she finally finds like true love and stuff like that. Apparently, I'm supposed to be writing another book. We're actually going to meet Haley when she is signing over her business. She doesn't know the young parking lot attendant that she was falling in love with in this book. He was tiny then. She meets him, but it's not a thing because he was like
He's a kid.
He's a kid. So she's paying him no attention. And like she's marrying the guy and she has to give up her technology business. So in those first 3 chapters, that's what happens. And we're going to follow her. And where she thinks she falls in love again with this guy named William. And he's the chauffeur because he's really funny and snarky and everything and sarcastic and quick of wit and not great looking, but good looking. He's everything that like Mr. Prescott is. And He's kind of like he's in shape, but he's old man in shape. So it's nice. But mostly it's more about social connections, and then we follow her through the social world, and then when that world turns on her. And I'm not going to tell you how that one ends, but yeah, it's a sad ending. But we get that nice happy ending in book three. Book three is free falling and loving it. There you go.
I love the fact that you're continuing this journey, that you're giving romance a chance. And it sounds a lot more dramatic than I meant to because we're only talking books. So let's be okay with that. You're enjoying this journey with this new genre and going crazy with it. Tell me a little bit more about your regular books. Let's talk about that a little. Come on.
So we have the End I Thought series, which is literary life guides with pop poetry. So it's End I Thought, Divorce with That, and then you can go on down the list. But that's more about like learning life through poetry. And we chose poetry because Hickory Dickory Dock, the mouse ran up the clock. You know that like off the back of your head. So we're taught poetry. We're taught to memorize poetry. And so if you use poetry as a way to learn about life, when the situation comes up, you might remember the rhyme that goes with this situation, which might make you make the right decision. So we have that. And we have the Misfit Guides, which is just about life and how it throws you crazy turns. Again, a poetry collection. And of course, Widow's Web and Widow's Stat, which is my one where, my characters grow from an AK to a Glock, that sort of stuff. It's about a African American crime family that owns about 6% of the crime in one city, and they've owned it as long as the Costa Nostra has owned it. They're always fighting to survive. They're always fighting not to get taken over. They're always fighting for respect. They fought racism back in the day. Like outright Jim Crow racism back in the day. And they still managed to survive, and how they did it and what that family has done to keep that control.
I love it. I love your genres and the fact that you can cross over so well.
I can't cross into romance well. I need Brandy.
It's okay. You have some help. I'll take that. I love the fact that you go from poetry, which is very, very specific and very unique. There is a skill to being a poet that not many people can pick up. Tell me, my friend, where can our listeners find you? Where they can find the books? Give us a little bit of that.
So you can find everything that I'm doing and everything that Jade is doing at www.andithoughladies.com. If you're looking for Brandy Miller, you can find her at 40daywriter.com, everything that she's kind of up to. You can always find us on Facebook. I think we're Wilnona Jade there. And Instagram and TikTok and anywhere else you pretty much want to find us. Like Twitter, I think we're Jade2555 and Just Right.
Awesome. Awesome. And the books are available on Amazon?
Oh, definitely. Most of them. Free full now, it's only available on Barnes and Noble.
Before you leave us, because we could talk all day, are you ready for the lightning round?
Yes, bring on the lightning so I may survive it.
Easy peasy. Don't think too much into it. Let's see. Pepsi or Coke?
Coke, but I'm allergic to both.
Oh, God. Okay. How about we stick with water? Breakfast or dinner?
Breakfast.
Nice. If you had an option between a private jet or a yacht, what would you pick?
A private yacht.
Camping or a hotel?
Hotel. Oh my goodness. No. You didn't even give a glamping as an offer. Like, I would think about glamping.
I love the look in your face. You're like, oh, God. So here's your last one. It's a little different. Let's see how you do. If your main character had a soundtrack, what song would she have?
Jasmine would have that Foxy Brown song, and I can't remember. She's a bad mamma. Yeah, I'm going old school on that one.
That is definitely old school. I was like, wow.
If you're talking about Haley, oh, I'm blue. Just because she's more tech and more logic. And that's, to me, that sounds like a very technical, logical song.
So talk to me, sweetie. We have closing remarks. What would you like our listeners to know? What would you like to close this off? Talk to us.
I think everyone should know, since we talked about journeys this whole time, is that writing is a journey and finding yourself in your writing is a journey. So don't be afraid of your next writing challenge, because you are going to find a new you there.
That is actually fairly powerful, very profound. Thank you so much to our listeners. Go ahead, give this episode some love. Give the fabulous people known as some love as well. Check out her stuff because it's absolutely hysterical. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Inside the Minds of Authors. We'll see you again next week. Thank you to our Patreon community for supporting all of these amazing shows. If you want to join the Patreon, is patreon.com/author DC Gomez. And we'll see you again next week. Bye, everybody.